Mendami seems like a nice guy, and I congratulate him on an extraordinary political achievement. But before the whole left side of the country catches socialism fever, let's listen to the other big winner in last Tuesday's election, Virginia Governor-elect Abigail Spanberger, who, before the 24 election, said things like, if the party didn't shift to the center, we will get torn apart. And we need to never use the word socialist or socialism ever again. Well, she was right, but they didn't listen. Typical, am I right, ladies? At least the party has a clear choice here, very clear. One wing is saying don't ever use the word socialist again, and one is saying,
I am a democratic socialist.
Clear, huh? So how do we decide who's right? Well, it turns out we don't really have to flip a coin. We have the evidence. In 2024, 13 Democrats won. In districts, Trump also won. All moderates.
Democrats might be dealing with a bigger issue than they are willing to admit. Bill Maher focused directly on the Democratic Socialists and argues this is no longer just a small fringe group. In his view, this faction is pushing the party toward a more radical socialist path while acting like that shift is normal, electable, and completely safe. Maher clearly does not accept that idea. So if you are ready for a full breakdown, let's get right into it.
Democratic socialism is like a dating profile. Things look great until you meet up in the real world. For example, Bernie Sanders, his big thing was always bringing single-payer health care to our country of 340 million. But when liberal, tie-dyed Vermont tried to do it for a population of 626,000, it collapsed like that poor in the Oval Office last week. Bernie, AOC, Mandani are not Democrats. They'll be the first to tell you that. They're democratic socialists, and that's a very different thing, and I don't think people know that yet.
This brings the conversation straight to Bernie Sanders, because Maher sees him as one of the clearest examples of how democratic socialism sounds better in theory than it works in reality. Sanders has spent years promoting single-payer healthcare as the fix for America's system, but Maher points to Vermont, a very liberal state where such a plan should have succeeded. Instead, it failed due to cost, complexity, and the difficulty of making it work. For Maher, this was not just a one-time failure. It was a warning about what happens when popular ideas face real-world challenges.
This is against why people sometimes, I think, question some of what you're saying. This is a survey student loan forgiveness recipients. 73% of applicants say they are likely to spend their extra money on non-essential, including vacations, smartphone, drugs, and alcohol. They admitted that to the pollster.
Who is this pollster?
NBC News. 52% they are likely to buy new clothing. 46% they would use the money for vacation and eat out at restaurants. This is why people have a thing about, I would never call it free money. Oh, I guess I just did, but...
Maher also criticizes how Bernie Sanders deals with difficult facts. He suggests that when the data is inconvenient, the reaction is often to question the source instead of addressing the issue itself. Asking about data sources is fair, but Maher's point is that many of these numbers reflect what regular Americans already think. When given a choice, many still prefer capitalism over socialism. In his view, that is because people value incentives, ownership, flexibility, and control over their income. He also believes that when money is given out without responsibility, it often fails to create long-term growth.
Kids think that stuff that happened before their appearance on the planet didn't really happen, but it did. We've run this experiment many times, and the results are always obvious. Here's capitalist South Korea at night from space. Here's socialist North Korea. Yeah. In 1990, Venezuela was wealthier than Poland. But then Poland, finally free of Soviet-style economics, went all in on capitalism. And now their economy is as big as Japan. And people there have high wages, low inflation, cars, vacations, homes. Meanwhile, Venezuela traded capitalism for Hugo Chavez's socialism for the 21st century, which turned out to be like socialism in the last century, or any century. A mess. It turned one of Latin America's richest countries into one of its poorest.
Maher's argument is that Americans are being asked to treat socialism as a new solution, even though history has already tested it many times, and the results have not been promising. He mentions Venezuela, Cuba, and North Korea as examples of what can happen when government control increases and economic freedom decreases. Venezuela once had strong wealth and influence, but poor management and heavy state control led to collapse. Cuba has faced decades of shortages and slow growth. North Korea stands as the most extreme case, with strict control, limited freedom, and very restricted choices. Maher's conclusion is direct. When these ideas move from theory to reality, the results often fall short of the promises.
I don't think people realize we already have a lot of socialism. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, unemployment insurance, food stamps, veterans benefits, Pell Grants, COVID-era payments, farm subsidies, disability payments, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, corporate bailouts, and the jobs program that is building weapons the Pentagon doesn't even want. All that is socialism, much of it appropriate to soften the edges of capitalism, but the DSA are radicals about this concept, and radical economic policy is always ineluctably married to radical social policy. Their platform, for example, calls for completely open borders. They're for what Biden was doing, but more.
At the same time, Maher is not claiming that America lacks social support systems. In fact, he points out that the country already combines capitalism with certain safety nets. Programs and protections already exist to reduce some of the system's harsher effects. So his criticism is not against all social programs. It is aimed at the push toward full democratic socialism, as if more government control is always the solution. In his view, going too far in that direction weakens the forces that drive innovation, effort, and productivity. That is why he describes outcomes like limited choices, more shortages, and long lines for basic goods. To him, these are warnings, not exaggerations.
It's either defund the police or military in the streets. Either MAGA's crypto crony capitalism or city-run grocery stores. No, I don't want that. I want a Democrat who reassures me if you like your Whole Foods, you can keep your Whole Foods.
Maher's preferred approach is more straightforward. He believes most voters want a system where effort is rewarded and people can keep a fair portion of what they earn. For him, capitalism is not just about making money. It is about motivation, ownership, and the idea that hard work and risk should lead to results. He sees aggressive redistribution as a risk when it expands too much. Once people feel the burden keeps increasing on those who produce, frustration grows. And as that frustration builds, motivation declines. In Maher's view, that is not fairness. It leads to stagnation.
Governor-elect Spanberger once said about Biden's presidency that, quote, nobody elected him to be FDR. They elected him to be normal. Normal! You know, at this year's DSA convention, or as it's commonly known, Comic-Con, get this, you had to submit a photo of a negative COVID test to get in. In 2025. Yeah, no one wants to do that again.
Abigail Spanberger's approach in Virginia becomes one of Maher's strongest examples. She did not embrace democratic socialism. Instead, she clearly distanced herself from it. She warned voters about where that path could lead, and that message connected with moderates and independent voters. Meanwhile, Zoran Mamdani found success by leaning more towards socialist-style policies in a strongly liberal area like New York City. Maher's point is that both strategies can win, but they do not work the same everywhere. What succeeds in a major city does not always work on a national level.
Let our words ring out so loud tonight that Andrew Cuomo can hear them in his $8,000 a month apartment. New York is not for sale.
This election is taking place when we have an administration in Washington which every day is moving us toward an authoritarian society.
This is America, New York City. Don't let them tell you any different. Don't let them tell you that we are the exception. We are the rule. And we set the bar for America. I'm talking to you, Donald Trump.
Figures like Zoran Mamdani, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and Bernie Sanders have become some of the most visible representatives of democratic socialism. Maher argues that their influence can no longer be ignored. These are not just loud individuals. They represent a larger shift within the party toward policies that move away from its traditional direction. Mamdani especially has gained strong support in New York City by promoting bold, progressive ideas. But Maher warns that success in one major city can lead to the wrong conclusions nationally. What motivates voters in New York may not appeal to people across the country, where priorities and values differ. That is where he sees the risk. If Democrats assume a local win proves nationwide support for socialism, they may be making a serious mistake.
Mamdani seems like a nice guy, and I congratulate him on an extraordinary political achievement. But before the whole left side of the country catches socialism fever, let's listen to the other big winner in last Tuesday's election, Virginia Governor-elect Abigail Spanberger, who, before the 24 election, said things like, if the party didn't shift to the center, we will get torn apart. And we need to never use the word socialist or socialism ever again. Well, she was right, but they didn't listen. Typical, am I right, ladies?
That is why Maher keeps highlighting the divide within the party. On one side are figures like Mamdani, Ocasio-Cortez, and Sanders, representing the push toward democratic socialism. On the other side are politicians like Abigail Spanberger, who warn against going too far in that direction. Maher sees this as more than a difference in style. To him, it is a choice between appealing to a broad audience or focusing on a narrower ideological group. He believes Democrats should take this seriously because if they fail to distance themselves from more extreme positions, it could create problems in future elections. In his view, many voters are already tired of policies and messaging that feel too strict and disconnected from everyday life.
At least the party has a clear choice here, very clear. One wing is saying don't ever use the word socialist again, and one is saying,
I am a democratic socialist.
Clear, huh? So how do we decide who's right? Well, it turns out we don't really have to flip a coin. We have the evidence. In 2024, 13 Democrats won. In districts, Trump also won. All moderate.
Putting everything together, Maher's main point becomes clear. He's not just criticizing a few policies or targeting specific figures like Sanders, Ocasio-Cortez, or Mamdani. He's warning that the Democratic Party may be moving toward ideas that sound appealing in theory but struggle in reality. Vermont serves as one example. Countries like Venezuela, Cuba, and North Korea serve as others. Spanberger's moderate success shows that not all Democratic voters support the same direction. Maher's conclusion is simple. If the party moves too far too quickly, it risks losing connection with the voters it still needs. For him, balance and perception both matter. Ignoring them could come with serious political consequences. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.